to Season 5 of the Hey Girl podcast with your host and my mom, Bethany Needham. This season, we get to hear from some incredible new guests, and we're bringing back some of our faves. Each guest will share their story of running their race in their place, and we hope they inspire you to do the same. If you want more information or to connect with my mom, go follow our new Instagram at HeyGirlGram, friend us on Facebook at HeyGirlPod, or even better, join our brand new Patreon to get bonus materials, hang with my mom, and you get to help Hey Girl continue to grow and reach more people. That's pretty cool. All right, time to grab that seltzer, maybe a tissue box just in case. Here's my mom.
Hey girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Hey Girl podcast. This week, you get to hear from my new friend, Nichole Fergesen. Nichole was someone who was introduced to me through a mutual friend, and what an incredible gift it was to sit down and hear her story. But before we get to that, really quickly, a couple of reminders. Y'all, if you have not joined our Patreon group, I want to encourage you to do that. Also, we're working with some incredible companies and products right now. And so the easiest thing I can tell you is to go to my website, look around, check things out, BethanyNeedham.com. You can join our Patreon there. You'll find our links to companies like Greetables and Cultivate What Matters, all of these people that we love so much. And would just love to have you join us in these things. Now, today's episode with Nichole, it's powerful and maybe a tearjerker for some of you. I feel like I need to create like this tissue emoji. You know how they have like the flame emoji next to how spicy meals are? I want to create something with like a tissue count emoji just to give you a warning going in, like, you know, brace yourself. But truthfully, this story was incredible to hear, but I know is going to be an encouragement, and for some of you, just really powerful to hear how God's worked in and through Nichole's life, especially walking through the loss of a spouse and so many other things. So without further ado, y'all, I cannot wait for you to hear from a new friend, Nichole Fergesen. Okay, listeners, I am so excited because Nichole Warner is in the house. This has been an ongoing, like, scheduling, rescheduling. She's been so patient with the chaos that is on our end of my moving and kind of pausing Hey Girl, then picking it back up. But Nichole, I am not only so excited that you are finally here, but listeners are going to understand this more. I just feel like God ordained this timing, because from when you were first brought to our, like, I guess on our planning table of, hey, you should talk to this woman, Nichole, to when we actually get to sit down, God has done so much in your life. It's crazy.
It has been a wild ride. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So I can't wait for all of this, but why don't we just start, first of all, by welcoming you officially to the Hey Girl podcast. Welcome, Nichole.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here finally, but
I know, right?
It is honestly like you're coming out of the phase that I'm also coming out of too, where it's just been kind of insanity and just like buckle your seatbelt. We're just going for the ride. So I get it. And
yes, so true. Well, Nichole, for those people who have not met you, or maybe you're a new name for them, why don't you take some time and just introduce yourself to us?
My name is Nichole Warner. Well, actually, it's Nichole Fergesen now. I'm gonna like remind myself of my new name. I live in Iowa, which is also a new thing for me too. I'm originally from New Hampshire, so we just picked up and moved back in July. So we're still getting our footing over here. I'm 31. I have 4 kids, and I am a work-at-home mom. So I just kind of wear all the hats and live in the adventure.
Yeah, for real. So you're from New Hampshire. Tell me did you grow up in New Hampshire?
I did. I was born in Massachusetts, but lived in New Hampshire most of my childhood and young adult life. Lived in Florida for a year, lived in Connecticut for 7, back to New Hampshire for 3, and now Iowa because I just can't sit still. So
I was about to say, what moved you around so much?
Just different life phases. So Florida would have been for school. Went to Clearwater Christian College, and then got married. After living in Florida for a year, moved up to Connecticut because job opportunity and wanted to be closer to family. More job changes, promotions brought us the ability to move even closer to family. My family's all in New Hampshire still. Moved up that direction. And then my life kind of got shaken up a bit, and now we're out in Iowa.
Oh my goodness. So when you were first brought to me, obviously there had been a pretty significant happening in your life. You mentioned you got married in Florida, but I believe when I was first introduced to you, you had just lost your first husband, which is obviously, I mean, you even mentioned you're 31, so you're not very old. Maybe could you take, as much as you're comfortable, kind of share this part of your story of obviously meeting your husband, having kids, and then I guess how everything led up to that moment when I kind of first was introduced to you.
Okay. My late husband's name is Marcus, and we're college sweethearts. We met, and I love to tell the story of how we met because it kind of describes who he is. So I was a freshman, he was a junior, and he worked security. So I remember driving off campus, and it was a small Christian college. So you had to write a pass of where you're going, who you're with, just very organized. So
I like that word over strict.
Yeah, it was just very, very organized. So I was going to meet a friend for dinner, totally casual. It was a boy, but there was no feelings or anything like that. But so going out off campus, and I gave Marcus the pass, and I was like, oh, he's really cute. I gave him my pass, and also I had some peanut M&Ms. So I was like, hey, you want some? Because, you got to plant the seed a little bit. And then, so I met my friend, we're starting to eat, and then Marcus just shows up at our table. We're at Moe's, and I'm just like, this guy just is here, and I have really no idea who he is. So, he sits down too, we start eating, and I go to the bathroom, and I come back, and the other guy's gone. And I was like, what on earth is happening right now? So the backstory is Marcus was convinced that this guy was like this was going to be a thing. And he's like, no, this is, you two are not going to be together. This is the girl that I want. So he literally got someone to cover his shift on the security and then just kick this guy out of this supposed date. And he would swear in heaven right now that this was a date. And he's like, I'm not going to have this. So it just kind of shows his character of he was bold and he went after what he wanted. So,
okay, hold on. So this was at Moe's?
This is at Moe's. So I'm like, this is
the opposite of welcome to Moe's. It's get out.
Yeah, seriously. It was, honestly, it was so funny, but it really got my attention because who does that?
Seriously.
It was romantic in a way because I was 17 at the time, and I hadn't really ever had a real relationship or anything like that. So that kind of kicked things off. And because of who he was, and he was just a dynamic personality, and he went for the things that he wanted. And that was kind of the overarching theme of his life. So it was just kismet. It was just meant to be from the very beginning. So we started dating from there. After dating he proposed after we dated for a year, and then we got married that next year. So I was a 20-year-old newlywed, which nowadays is unheard of. And yeah. I don't know, I just, from the very beginning, the first year was hard because we both basically had to learn how to be adults together. Mm-hmm. But then we just kind of grew up together, and we were married for 9 years before he passed. We lived in Florida for about a year. And then that's when we moved north, and then north a little bit more. So I always said to people that how was it a risky move? Now that I'm a little bit older, I'm wow, I'm glad that I made that good choice, because I see so many relationships that they do struggle or fall apart. So I definitely feel like God was in that, and how he gave me so much peace and clarity at such a young age. So we were able to build such a crazy, amazing life, like before 30 years old. So he died when I was 29, and we had been married for 9 years. And there was like a part of that that was just like, how awesome that I have already lived a lifetime before my 30s, when people are really just starting to get married nowadays. The whole way our relationship developed over the years was, I just feel like it was all God. So yeah, through the moves and just getting married at a young age and all that, those different things, we had kids. We have 3. I think I was 24. I can't keep track of the age sometimes anymore. So we had our first child at 24, I think 25, maybe 27, around that time frame. So we were, done building our family in our 30s. He was climbing the corporate ladder. We had it all figured out. We were, chasing our dreams together, but also just so content where God had us in life. So he passed January 2019, which, was a shock to us all, and very sad, because he was such an incredible man. And anybody that met him would have said those same words of just, he was so dynamic, such a leader, such an example of just, you would meet him and then he was also your best friend. And I'm so thankful for the life that we were able to live together.
So Nichole, obviously we will get to the place, where you're at right now, but just kind of pausing in that moment in your own life, for those of us listening who are married or in a relationship, like you were in a relationship, that can be one of those things that is your greatest fear or is just a fear in the back of your mind is, what would happen if they weren't here anymore? And you've walked that journey. You've walked as a mom and, losing your husband. Tell me in terms of, and you mentioned, and I love that perspective, you look back and like the way that you can see God work when you can look back on something is not necessarily what you see when you're in the midst of it. But when you look back on that time, what are the profound ways that you kind of see God not only preparing you, but also just walking with you in all of that?
One of the biggest things was moving from Connecticut, which was like 2.5 hours from my parents. And then about a year or a little bit more than a year, moving us to New Hampshire, which was 20 minutes away from my parents. So just being able to already have that close support system, like that was all God. Just the timing of the move, like we were close before, but now like I was so close that my mom could I could swing over and drop the kids off if I had a doctor appointment. And I didn't have that before. When we were in Connecticut, we had 3 kids, 3 and under. So when we moved back to New Hampshire, my youngest turned 1 the summer after we bought our house. So like my kids were babies.
Yeah.
And had I not had that immediate support system, like it would have been so much harder. I probably would have, after he died, then had to pick up my life and try and figure out something, because I had friends, but family is just kind of like the next level of support. So I feel like that was God's way of just like, all right, but this is going to happen. Let me move you this direction, giving me kind of like a piece of my heart, like understanding maybe subconsciously that something could happen. And just like, I've talked a lot about my faith journey over the years and how I feel like God has deepened my relationship so that when this happened, it didn't crush my world. It was crushed in a certain way, but I had like that hope because I knew where he was. I knew that God has a plan and that God was going to take care of us. And without that context and without having that deepened relationship, I don't think I would be where I was right after he died. I don't think I would be where I am today. So to give more context to that, like I grew up in a Christian home, went to church every week. So I had the knowledge of God. I knew the words to say. I knew, how to walk the walk, basically.
Yeah.
And going to Christian school, going to Christian college, I call it like my rededication to Christ, where before, like, I knew God, but that was the point where, like, I discovered God. I discovered what it was to have a genuine relationship with him, which meant like reading my Bible and like praying, which it sounds so simple, but if you don't do it, then you don't realize how it becomes a relationship and not just that head knowledge. And then I started like kind of like digging in. So this is when I was like late teens. And then I was kind of like plateaued. And then we started having kids. And we're, again, Christians, we're still going to church. We know, we believe, but I didn't have that like daily practice of like going to God in all things. And I remember the time frame specifically. And I wrote more in depth about this on my blog, but like kind of like detailing my faith journey, because I feel like it's so important. And I want to like encourage people to just like pursue him because of the impact that it makes in your life. So I just had my second child. That threw me for a loop because he was a tough one. But I just remember being with my in-laws in Pennsylvania, and like my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law are just women of the word. They are the Proverbs 31 woman, where they just they emanate Christ. Yeah, just talking about all these biblical things and just seeing my children, all of a sudden I had this like realization of, I have to teach these children. Like, I have to live my life in a way that I want them to grow up knowing and trusting in God. So I started reading my Bible, and I started like waking up early before the kids, and like I read the Bible cover to cover. It took me like 3 years, but that's okay. And just learning to, like, I journaled out my prayers and things like that. And it just helped me establish like a routine and just feeling that peace and just drawing closer to God. And I felt like the more I did it, the more I yearned for it. So that was a span of like probably 3 years of like boot camp. And it sounds so silly, but I had to figure out like, how do I develop my relationship with God? And that was what I needed to do that. So by the time Marcus died was like 3 years into that, where I read the Bible cover to cover. I had been consistent in my prayer life and devotionals. So when he died, I feel like God had not only like giving me a strong foundation, but then really gave me that relationship that I talk about. So getting the most devastating news in the world was the overarching hope beyond that, of like, this is terrible. Like, my life is now, most people would say, ruined. But understanding that there is a greater context of that, and how God is there, and just being able to have someone to give all that sorrow and anger and frustration to, and not just have to hold that in and not know what to do with it and be confused. I'm just so thankful, because God he really has taken care of me, and seeing him work through my life over so many years to get to this point was I'm just really so thankful.
Girl, I feel like you are speaking to my heart so much. And just, I feel this resonating in terms of like a lot of scripture verses running through my mind, even as you're talking. I have this picture. I'm such a like imagery person. Like, I feel like I always see things in kind of like just pictures of things, and that picture of an anchor. And I've always described my morning quiet times as the anchor in my day. Like, it's not about legalism or a checked box. It's this time that when I set aside to spend time alone, like before my kids wake up, before the day starts, that it's this sense of anchoring into God, because I don't know what my day holds. Like, I don't know what's going to come. And I just, oh my gosh, I'm like getting choked up, just the beauty of you describing this, like 3 years of just digging in that anchor. And you can call it roots, anchor, whatever. But when that storm hit that you didn't know was going to hit, for God to sustain you like that, it was not the moment that it hit that you threw the anchor and you're like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. But it was almost like this, something that you had been doing for so long that it held strong, and God's faithfulness and his grace and all of the things that we learn in those times with him, when we actually like get to experience it to the deepest parts of our being in that kind of suffering. And I just appreciate you so much, even just sharing, because I think it's important for all of us to be reminded that, that relationship with God, like it's not something that we run to when the hard times come, and when, not that we can't, God is a gracious and loving God. It's not like his arms close as soon as, we pick the wrong time, but there is something incredibly powerful and deep and beautiful about walking with God on that daily journey, and how he prepares us for the things we don't know are coming, which is literally the theme of 2020, right? Like, who knows? Who knows what today? Goodness gracious. At the Mustard Seed Marketplace, they believe that your purchase makes a powerful impact, whether it's providing jobs for overcomers of sex trafficking or supporting small businesses. They want you to be able to shop the causes that you care most about. They're passionate about bringing you on-trend items with a greater purpose. Enjoy shopping their handmade creations from near and far as they create a marketplace for artisans around the globe. They've curated a collection of world-changing jewelry, apparel, handbags, and more for over 40 groups in over 15 countries. And every single item is fair trade, locally made, or give back brands. You can use our code HeyGirl15 for 15% off your entire purchase at themustardseedmarketplace.com. Now, this is a one-time use code. Again, HeyGirl15 for 15% off. Guys, the Mustard Seed Marketplace has so many great options for gift giving. This is the perfect time to start shopping for the holidays. Now, be sure to find them on Facebook and Instagram, and check out their website often, as they're always getting new pieces. So once again, that's the mustardseedmarketplace.com. Use our code HeyGirl15 for 15% off your entire purchase. And take this holiday to purchase gifts that make an incredible impact to people all around the globe. Obviously, there's so much, I'm sure, to the journey of walking your children through loss and these things. Why don't we pick up the story after, your late husband had passed? God has done a lot from that 2019 to now. I feel like from a distance, because I'm just now meeting you face to face, but from a distance, it's been such a powerful testimony to me. I get excited watching when God does this kind of work in somebody's life. Even if I don't know you, I'm just like, this is so cool. Like, and it's so evident that it's his hand at work. So for those who don't stalk you on the social medias yet, or your blog, share a little bit about that with us.
So I'm a big documenter. I don't necessarily journal per se, but I do have a blog, and I've had it for years, on and off, depending on how demanding my children were. So when Marcus first died, my life kind of was just in this whirlwind where you're just, it was hard to even function. So I took a step back from everything. And then it was a month or so where right away I did start, I was still in my prayer journal. And, that was so valuable to me, because you have all these thoughts swirling around and trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. So writing that down and just pouring my heart out through prayer. And then I just started sharing on my Instagram, just a little bit of my reflections and my prayer life, and just kind of how I was walking through this. At this point, I hadn't blogged for, I think, a year and a half. I really took a step back. And then So I started like on my Instagram, just like a little update here and there. And I actually canceled my blog at this point because I was like, all right, my main income is gone. Like I can't justify paying for the things that come with hosting a blog and things like that. I canceled the blog, and then all of a sudden I feel like, this sounds a little woo-woo, but I feel like God like spoke to me of like, just like share, and not in a way that like, I don't want to bring attention to myself, but I wanted to show people what God was doing in my life and how I was still standing and how we were still choosing joy, because that was kind of like our family theme. So I started writing, and then just kind of like just share little pieces here and there along the first like year or so after he died. And I realized that even though I was writing for me, I started getting feedback from other people of like how much it was impacting them through my story. And I'm over here and I'm like, that's crazy. Like that is not at all my intention, but it encouraged me to continue to share and to continue to write. And then I realized how healing the writing was for me as well. I would say that like the first like 3 or 4 months was a complete fog. It was kind of a cluster, not gonna lie, because not only did I lose my spouse, my husband, but I lost my emotional support. I lost the father of my children. I lost his income. So, you know, there's so many things that are wrapped up in the loss of a person, or your husband specifically, that your whole life is just altered in a way that's just catastrophic. So it took like 3 or 4 months to kind of like figure it out, or to be able to drive in my car without just sobbing, like the tears just wouldn't stop. I would say the first few months were just like, just catching my breath is how I've said it before, of just like understanding what's happened, helping the kids through their grief, which is just, you know, obviously as a mother, you do whatever you can to help your children, but it's hard. Like it was so hard to be grieving myself and to try and unravel finances and how to pay for all this different stuff. But then also to be there and available for the children too. After the first few months of like kind of figuring things out, then I started to pursue like just my own life outside of like this grief bubble. And a lot of that I attribute to some girlfriends in my town kind of just like invited me into their circle. And it gave me life in a weird sort of way. I learned that I could have fun and go, and like I could not be a mom for a few hours in the evening, or we went up to one of my friend's house up in Winnipesaukee, and just to learn that it was okay to be me, and to just, you know, be a, not necessarily carefree, but to back out of that intensity of, you know, helping my kids grieve and figuring out the house stuff, and to just, you know, having fun is okay. And then the more I started like figuring out this balance of life of like, it doesn't have to always be this hard. There also can be fun too. And I think a lot of people who have gone through something traumatic, or losing their husband specifically, think that like, all right, this is my life. My life is just hard. Like, you know, it's okay to do things. It's okay to pursue enjoyment, even though it's still coupled with that sadness. But like, I feel like it balances out a little bit of like, I'm still living, you know, he died, but we are still here. And it's important to just do something for yourself. And I feel like that really brought my confidence in life up so much, because I was able to just enjoy the little things again and more. So after I got more confidence in how my life looked like as a single person, raising the kids, and, you know, all the joys that come with that, I just started envisioning like what I wanted my life to look like beyond this. And that came with maybe being with someone new. So I would say it was like 6 months in, which a lot of people are like, oh, how can you talk about that 6 months in? But I want to give like a little bit more clarity to people who are not in that situation. Like, when you have a significant loss like that, your time sense is so skewed where like a month would go by and it felt like a year. It felt just so long and so hard. So when I say like I started like thinking about talking to people or maybe being with someone new at 6 months out, it really like I was in a really good place too. So long as you're in a good place, wanting to be with someone is not necessarily a bad thing. And it doesn't take away from the love that I had with him. And if anything, it like validated the fact that like I was with someone so wonderful that it gave me confidence to look for that again. And I wasn't like burned by a previous relationship or anything. It's like, no, I was loved and my kids need a dad and I want to love again. That kind of started the second half of last year of just pursuing fun for myself. And the more fun that I had, the more fun I was for my kids and like building this household of joy again. And also like just figuring out how to date because like I said before, I got married at 20. So I never like talked to people. I never really like dated or, you know, so that was kind of interesting to figure that out too. But also to not let doubts creep into my mind because when I actually had a conversation with my dad before, like I put myself out there talking negativity over myself. And I think it's really easy to do this. Like, even if you haven't walked through a trauma like I have, but just to say like, I am just a mom or I am, you know, only this or only that. Because I said to my dad, I was like, Dad, I am a single mom, stay-at-home mom of 3 kids with a dead, awesome husband. I've been married for 9 years. So like at 29 years old, like what guy is going to, first of all, understand me, but also like come into that?
Yeah.
So he was the one who told me, he's like, Nichole, like put yourself out there. You'd be surprised. Like, you know, you're just building me up and like, don't let those titles that we put on ourselves take power in our life. Like, yes, I have a big story and it's going to take a really unique man to handle all that and to like come in and fit into our life dynamic. But it was like kind of like an awakening for me of like, okay, I have a big story, but that doesn't mean that I am not worthy of new love. So it's just been a crazy wild adventure. And I don't even know if I'm still on the same subject that you.
No, you're doing awesome.
It has basically been a story of like just his death, rebuilding, and then to see like the redemption all happen within the span of 2 years, which is just incredible.
So where and how did Dustin walk into I know you said here walks in Dustin, like he literally walked in the room or.
Well, so that explains why I'm in Iowa. So Dustin's from Iowa, which I had never been before, and I hadn't really even thought twice about, honestly. So being a work from home mom of 3 kids was very hard to meet someone, and especially in New England, where it's very unchurched. Like I knew that I wanted a strong man of God because like I know what kind of relationship that I have with God, and I want someone who also believes the same thing and reciprocates that and teach our children the same thing.
Yeah.
So looking in New England was very discouraging. Not to say that like God can't do big things, but I also like took a step back and was like, okay, God, this doesn't seem very possible. So I know the things that I want for me and my kids, and I'm not willing to settle in any of those because I know what a great big love looks like. So like, I'm not interested in anything less than that. And my girlfriends would make fun of me. They're like, maybe you should lower your standards a little bit. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. Like you don't understand what I had. And I know that it's possible again, because God promises that in the Bible. He tells the widow that you are to remarry, the young widow, she should remarry. So I was like, okay, God's promises. I know it's going to happen somehow in some capacity, and it's beyond my doing. So one of my girlfriends told me about, it's a Christian blogger. She does like this matchmaking type service, and I need to figure out like a better way to like describe it. But basically, you put up like this profile of yourself, and that's what I did. It's Kelly's Corner for any of you single Christian people.
I have heard of this. What's her name again?
Kelly's Corner. So with 2 Ks, it's on Instagram, and she has like all these profiles on there. So it's really fun, just a way of like, everyone is kind of looking for the same thing. Dustin was on there, not by his own doing. A couple of them, his buddies' wives, put his profile on there. And
did he know it was on there?
He did, because they were like, hey, Dustin, you should do this. And he's like, I'm not really interested in that, because he didn't like really date much or pursue that too much, which is, to each their own. But like, he wasn't necessarily like, he didn't do it himself. They put up like the pictures that they could find of him and all that. So I remember like seeing his profile come up there, and I was like, okay, he's really cute. So all I did was like, I friend requested him, and then like, I didn't do anything, because like, I don't know how you feel, but like, I want to be pursued. So I'm not like follow for myself to be available. Like, I'm like, you see me, like you see me over here in your DMs or whatever, but I'm not going to like go crazy. So he even told me, like, when I friend requested him, he like was like, oh, who's this? But I didn't say anything, because I didn't send a message or whatever. So I was like a couple days later, and he responded to like one of my pictures or something, and that just initiated the conversation.
Oh.
So yeah, and the rest is history, because it just like, it was so easy and so natural from the start that we both admitted, like, it is meant to be. This is God. And the way that, like, I didn't know about this Kelly's Corner until another young widow friend of mine told me about it. He didn't even put himself on it. So like, the only way we connected basically is because God. So it was just really cool. Very unique. So I'm just really thankful for those girls. We'll send them a thank you card every year.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'm assuming, have you met the people that put them on that now that you live? Yeah. That's awesome. Now I'm starting to like, I have some single friends. Maybe I should be putting them on this.
Good. Absolutely. Oh, you should. And a lot of like talking about like dating after you've been widowed, it's such an uncomfortable conversation. And I started talking about it, and then I didn't, because it's like very opinionated. Like, a lot of people are in the camp of like, you lost your husband, you should like honor him by being single for X amount of years, like, or whatever. Like, it's a difficult thing to pursue love after you've lost someone. As a young widow, like, don't be afraid to ask us about dating, or like, do you want to be with someone? Do you want like, set them up, just help them to find someone. And especially your single friends too. Like, that is what Kelly does for her ministry, is like, when you're single, especially when you get up in ages and, complexities of life, it gets difficult. So set your friends up, tell them about yours. Like, that's how, like, we need some help.
Oh, I love that perspective. And oh my gosh, if it wasn't even before like global pandemic, I have had conversations with friends like my age. So just to give you some context, you and I share, like, I also got married very young. And because of that, I didn't experience a ton of the dating angst and awkward, because my husband and I was 16 when we started dating and 18 when we got married. So
that's amazing.
But my friends now who are going through that, I could not even, I'm like, I don't even know how, like, that there's a way to date anymore, because the world just looks so different. And then throw on top of that a global pandemic and like stay-at-home orders. I feel like we can safely say at this point that there is no like rule book in terms of how you meet some, obviously not like in a sinful outside of God's word, but in like the whole judgment about online dating or whatever. I'm like, can we please just finally toss that out the window? Because
how are you supposed to meet someone when you're home?
Literally. And now you can't even see them from like the nose down. It's like you're basing it on their eyeballs, and God forbid if they're wearing sunglasses, you're done for. So
no chance.
Yeah. And even if they talk to you, it's all muffled through their masks. So I don't know. I just
set your friends up. I'm sure that they want to be. And don't be afraid of, like, if someone who's widowed, it's okay to open up that conversation and let them lead. And I just want to give more power to that, because I have a bunch of young widow friends where we're all back here and we're like, yes, my heart's been broken, but I want to meet someone. And it's to make that conversation not uncomfortable for people. And if it is uncomfortable for that person who's lost someone, then then it is what it is. But don't be afraid to talk about loving a new person.
Yeah. Because
grief is not competitive. Like, the fact that Dustin exists does not mean that my love for Mark has stopped either. So it's just there's so many layers and it's so complicated, but I believe that we are to be with someone, and being loved is awesome, and sharing life with someone is just the best. And it's awesome to have a companion and to someone that I can raise my children with. So yeah.
And I really appreciate what you shared about how, even like, first of all, the 6 months in, how people making judgments on, again, I feel like the thing that there's been a lot of learning this year. And one of them is, I feel like collectively we have now all experienced how crazy crisis and all of that throws time out the window, because like, I can't tell you the number of people that are literally like, how is it this much? Like, I feel like we've all collectively gone through that. So once again, can we please just toss, like, finally, people, let's get over it. Like, you just don't know until you've walked through something. And it doesn't have to be the same kind of tragedy or whatever, but whatever you walk through, like, you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. But then I loved your perspective on, and I think it's so true, your desire for love and relationship is not like a dishonoring of your husband. It's actually, if anything, just this beautiful picture of, no, what he was such a like beautiful example and experience and whatever in my life, that I do want that again. Like, versus I do think coming out of it being like, I ain't going there again.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, I love that. There's so many things I appreciate about your story, and I'm so glad that we're getting to share it. But one of them is, I appreciate your honesty that it hasn't been easy. It's not like, I'm walking with Jesus through loss and yay, everything's happy all the time. But just the depth of your faith in terms of, that beauty in being with God in a way that you're still like, you're clinging to him when the storm's raging around you. And then even looking back to see like, okay, God, that whole, I see you, God, like you can just kind of like map it out. This is so much of what the heart of Hey Girl is. When we talk about running our race in our place, it's sometimes our place is hard. Like sometimes there's things that are hard, but there's hard and, like you said, there was that season of hard and fun and happiness, and that's okay. It's okay for these things to commingle. And how do we just remain faithful in all of that? And I want to encourage you. One, I think I love hearing your journey, but I know for a fact that it's influencing and encouraging other people. And I know that's probably crazy to think about because you're just living it, right? Like you're like, yeah, but
all right.
Well, and I hope that's an encouragement to our listeners, because everybody feels that way about their own story. Like if you're listening and you're like, wow, like her story, of course, like she has this incredible influence, like, yeah, she doesn't feel that way. Like, and you may not feel that way, but when you live out your faith and you're walking with God, sometimes even in the mundane of it, people are watching and they're being encouraged and influenced. So keep on going. Well, I know from this, I'm taking away that I'm going to go, I want to get Kelly from Kelly's Corner. Is it a Kelly who I want Kelly on the podcast? I declare.
Oh, you need to. Oh, she's fantastic. She's an amazing person. I mean, I don't know her personally. I know her just through all this and the short conversations that we've had of, just telling her thank you, because it's all because of her. But yeah, what a ministry, and just such an incredible thing. And just to listening to what God speaks over you too, and just being sensitive to that of like, God has called her to this ministry, and how cool that, like, she just said yes. And I think that we were like the 20th couple to get engaged and married through it. So like
wow.
that's a lot of lives that you've impacted. So just to be faithful in your journey, and exactly like you said, if your daily walk will impact someone in some way. So are we being lights in the world for God, or are we letting life dictate how we feel? So going through something like this, like I could be sour and I could be, bah humbug and, just really unhappy. Well, I'm unhappy about it. Yes. But also understanding like, okay, there's the bigger picture of all of this, and God has given me this story. So I have this unique story at 31 years old to, be widowed and single mom, remarried and all this. I want to give other people confidence of just sharing their story, but being honest about it too. Of I won't pretend that it's been all sunshine and flowers. And I have bad days, I have bad moments and hard times, but that's life. And we need to like acknowledge those things and just be submissive to what God is teaching us through all of it, and just be a light for whatever it is that we do. I feel like a lot of people have this thought that if you're a Christian, your life needs to like appear perfect, which is kind of like how I grew up, of like, all right, my life looks a certain way and that's what it is, versus me. Like I'm over here, I'm like, all right, guys, like I'm just having a really hard moment. This is why. And I feel like that is more authentic, because why would you pretend your life is any different than it is? It's good times and bad, but just show how God is there through all of it. So live your life proudly.
Well, and it doesn't, pretending that we got it all together isn't going to help everybody else who is living real lives, regardless of what their Instagram feed may appear. All of us, we're in living this life, good times and bad. And kind of, to me, where God's faithfulness is so powerful is when we get to see it shown up in someone's vulnerability and authenticity about this is hard, but God. And even that, but God isn't necessarily, like you said, that isn't always sunshine and rose. It's not like, oh, silver lining, but God, but this like realness in terms of in this moment, he is literally sustaining me. Like I'm broken, and in the joyous times, not being afraid to like celebrate. I think sometimes like we almost get afraid of the other side of things too. Like, oh, I don't want to be like showy. Like, no, don't think of it as showy. Think of it as like brag on God, like let his glory shine in beauty and joy and celebration. And don't feel like you also have to always have like a negative angle to everything you share either. So I appreciate it. Thank you so, so much, Nichole. I just want, as we wrap up here, first of all, where can people find you if they want to continue to follow your story, read your blog? What's the best place for them to find you?
I am changing over all of my things right now. So everything will be under Nichole Fergesen. So Instagram's Nichole.Fergesen. The blog is currently transitioning over to, so it'll just be www.NicholeFergesen.com. Right now it's NicholeWarnerBlog.com, but it'll all be fixed in a minute, or when I get to it. It's a blog. And Facebook also, you can just search Nichole Fergesen and follow me along there. You know how it is. Every media has a different purpose, but all of my like writing and things like that is on the blog, and more daily stuff is on Instagram.
Perfect. And if you were sitting across from a young woman, or maybe even a young man who's been a widower, and you wanted to just speak a word of encouragement or wisdom or whatever from where you're at in your journey, what would you want to say to them today?
Your life has not ended, and just to continue to pursue God and pursue life, even though it's not what you planned. Just keep on keeping on and watch God work and be patient in the process. Because a lot of times, like when you're in a stage of life that you didn't necessarily want to be in, it's hard because you didn't want to be here. So you kind of want to get out of it, and you don't necessarily want to embrace it either. But God has put you in that stage of life for a reason, whether it's to learn something or to minister to someone. just be faithful where you're at in the journey and just to continue to pursue what you feel like God has called in your life.
Amen. That is a good word.